Let's start with a scene I'm willing to bet you've experienced or at least witnessed from afar. You are walking through your local park on a perfect Saturday afternoon, and suddenly you see it.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. It's this stunning, majestic creature that looks like it just stepped out of a high-definition wilderness documentary, a Siberian Husky.
Yeah.
It has that thick, beautiful, untamed coat. Those piercing, icy blue eyes lock onto yours, and immediately your brain just bypasses all logic and goes, I need that dog. I want that wild aesthetic in my life.
It is an incredibly powerful, almost primal reaction we have to them. Visually
Mm.
speaking, I mean, they represent a direct link to the wilderness. People are naturally magnetized to that wolf-like appearance. And honestly, the initial attraction makes complete sense.
It totally makes sense.
Okay.
But here is the catch, and this is where our deep dive today really takes off. Because that cinematic, slow-motion moment at the park, that is the absolute easiest part of the experience.
Oh, without a doubt.
The reality of that fantasy usually crashes down on you about, say, 3 weeks later. That's when you realize that same beautiful creature just scaled your 6-foot wooden privacy fence like it was a minor speed bump.
Yeah, just sailed right over it.
Exactly. Or maybe it decided to howl at the top of its lungs for 20 minutes straight, right in the middle of your most important Zoom presentation of the month.
The gap between the aesthetic appeal and the daily reality is staggering. It really is. That massive echoing canyon between the fantasy of owning a husky and the intense lifestyle required to actually live with one, well, that's why this breed carries a notoriously complicated reputation.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission for you today is to decode the Siberian Husky's operating system. We're pulling from an incredibly detailed breed overview provided by the VitalPet sources, which is a veterinary and dog health academy.
It's a great resource.
It really is. We're looking past the superficial traits to understand the underlying mechanics of why this dog acts the way it does. So, okay, let's unpack this. If we want to understand why a husky is currently doing parkour off the side of your house, we cannot start by looking at its coat or its eye color.
Have to dig deeper.
Yeah, we have to rewind the clock and look at the actual engineering of this animal. And spoiler alert for anyone listening with a suburban backyard, chilling on a patio was never part of their blueprint.
No, definitely not. To even begin grasping their behavior, you have to look at the architects of the breed, which are the Chukchi people. This is an indigenous group from northeastern Siberia.
And we are talking about a really harsh environment there.
Oh, absolutely brutal. They're living in one of the most unforgiving, brutal climates on planet Earth. For the Chukchi, these sled dogs were not pets, and they weren't just a convenient way to get around. They were a fundamental pillar of human survival.
And from what I read in the VitalPet data, I realized I had the breed's historical purpose completely wrong.
How so?
Well, when most of us hear sled dog, our modern brains immediately default to a racing context. We picture the Iditarod, we picture like explosive speed. We basically assume they are sprinters built to run fast and cross a finish line.
Right, right. And that assumption sets up the very first point of failure for new owners. Speed over a short distance was practically useless in the Siberian tundra.
Because they'd just freeze if they stopped.
Basically, yeah. What the Chukchi required, what literally meant the difference between life and death, was endurance. They engineered an animal that could keep working steadily, pulling a load mile after agonizing mile in freezing temperatures, and often while surviving on a severely limited caloric intake.
Man, I was trying to come up with a good mental model for you listening, and it feels like this. People adopt a husky because it looks sleek, so they think they are bringing home a Ferrari.
Yeah, a car built for a quick, flashy sprint.
Exactly. But biologically, they are actually getting a heavy-duty commercial diesel tractor. It is an engine designed to turn on and just run continuously under load for days.
What's fascinating here is the underlying biology of that diesel engine. The VitalPet sources explain that huskies undergo a unique physiological change when they run, often referred to as a metabolic switch.
A metabolic switch.
Yeah. So if you take a sprinting breed, like a greyhound, they rely heavily on burning glycogen, which are stored carbohydrates, for quick energy. Once that glycogen depletes, they hit a wall. They are physically exhausted.
Right, like a runner bonking in a marathon.
Exactly. Huskies, however, can shift their metabolism to tap directly into fat and lipid stores without depleting their glycogen.
Wait, really? Which means that they basically don't run out of fuel in the same way other dogs do.
Precisely the opposite of a normal dog. Their cardiovascular system is so efficient at processing oxygen and burning fat that they don't have a biological off switch.
That is wild.
If you take a typical dog for a brisk 20-minute walk around the neighborhood, its internal meter registers the exertion and says, "Great, I'm tired, time for a nap." A husky does not possess that meter. A 20-minute walk doesn't even elevate their heart rate enough to qualify as a warm-up.
So when you have an animal whose body is built to literally never stop moving, the brain piloting that body has to be equally relentless.
Oh, 100%.
And that brings us to the next massive hurdle of husky ownership, which is their psychology. They are notoriously labeled as stubborn or disobedient, but honestly, I want to push back on that label. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Let's hear it.
Based on the survival mechanics we just discussed, I don't think a husky ignoring a command is actual disobedience.
Right.
I mean, a husky in a suburban backyard is just an unemployed escape room genius applying its survival traits in the absolute wrong context.
I completely agree with that reframing. I mean, the word stubborn implies a lack of intelligence when in reality we're dealing with a highly specialized form of intellect. Let's compare them to a herding breed like a border collie.
Okay.
Herding dogs were developed to take constant split-second direction from a human handler. Their intelligence is rooted in deference to authority. But a sled dog was bred for the exact opposite. They were bred to possess independent judgment.
Because blindly following orders in Siberia could get you killed, right?
That is the core of it. Imagine a musher driving a team of dogs across a frozen expanse. The human is at the back of the sled, but the lead dog is at the front, feeling the terrain. The musher yells the command to go forward, but the lead dog feels the ice shifting underneath its paws.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if that dog possesses blind compliance, it steps forward, the ice breaks, and the entire team perishes.
It is incredible to think about. Disobedience is actually a life-saving genetic feature in this context. We call it stubbornness, but scientists call it intelligent disobedience.
Exactly. They were actively bred to assess their environment and make literal life or death executive decisions to override human instruction. That deep-seated independent streak did not magically disappear just because someone moved the dog from the tundra to a cozy living room in Ohio. Deference to authority simply is not in their genetic code.
Which completely explains the escaping.
Oh, yes.
The VitalPet notes highlight that they are infamous escape artists. If you put a husky in a securely fenced yard that would easily contain a golden retriever, the husky doesn't see a boundary. It sees a geometry problem waiting to be solved.
And their physical mechanics make them exceptionally good at solving it. Their paws are incredibly strong from generations of digging through snow, so they will quickly excavate deep trenches under a fence line.
Tunnel right out.
Yep. They also use their environment. They will find a lawn chair, use it as a springboard, find a foothold in the chain link, and just pull themselves over a 6-foot barrier. They have even been observed studying how a human lifts a gate latch, eventually using their mouths or paws to replicate the movement.
That is terrifyingly smart. So for anyone listening who is planning to bring one of these dogs home, secure containment is not a suggestion. You need tall fencing, barriers physically buried into the ground to prevent digging, and you absolutely have to remove any potential climbing points.
Yeah, negotiable.
And I assume this independent psychology completely changes how you have to train them, too.
It dictates the entire approach. If you attempt an old-school training method that relies purely on forcing the dog to defer to your authority, that do this because I am the boss mentality, you will fail.
It just won't work.
Not at all. Training a husky requires negotiation because they ask, what is in this for me? You have to use high-value, reward-based training. You must convince their independent brain that choosing to do what you want is the most rewarding puzzle available to them at that moment.
But that independent problem-solving brain doesn't just process terrain and fences. It completely dictates how they view the living creatures around them. So let's look at their social wiring and pack dynamics.
Good pivot.
Because the history with the Chukchi didn't just wire their muscles, it hardwired how they communicate and socialize.
And the environmental context is vital here. We established that huskies worked as a coordinated team pulling sleds, but they also lived in exceptionally close proximity to the Chukchi families. When the temperatures plummeted, the dogs would often sleep inside the dwellings with the humans, providing shared body heat.
Right.
Because of that intimate living arrangement, any form of human aggression was fundamentally incompatible with survival. An aggressive dog would have been immediately removed from the gene pool.
Which leads to an absolutely hilarious irony for the listener. You have this dog that visually looks like a fierce, intimidating apex predator, like a wolf. But if a burglar kicks your front door open in the middle of the night, A husky is probably not going to protect your house.
No, definitely not.
They're going to greet the intruder with a wagging tail, maybe bring them a toy, and just assume a new friend has arrived.
They are famously terrible guard dogs. Their friendliness towards strangers is one of the most consistent traits across the breed. They are incredibly social, highly affectionate, and very tolerant within an active human household.
Yeah.
However,
Always a however.
always. However, that pack orientation presents a totally different challenge when we look at how they view other animals, particularly small ones.
The prey drive. Because they weren't just eating kibble out of a bowl in Siberia.
No, food was incredibly scarce. The Chukchi couldn't always afford to provide full, dense meals for an entire team of dogs. Historically, these dogs had to hunt to supplement their own caloric needs. That ancient instinct to spot, chase, and catch small, fast-moving animals is still deeply embedded in their neurology.
Meaning compatibility with the family cat or a small neighborhood animal is highly complex.
It requires immense caution. While it varies from dog to dog and early socialization can definitely help, you can never simply assume a husky will peacefully coexist with a small animal. Their predatory sequence is triggered by movement.
So just a quick dash across the room.
Exactly. A cat darting across the room can bypass their social training and instantly activate that ancient hunting reflex.
Speaking of ancient reflexes, we have to talk about the noise. Because huskies don't typically bark like a normal dog. They howl. And if you've ever been close to it, it is this deeply primal, resonant sound that just lingers in the air.
This raises an important question about animal communication, like why did they evolve to howl instead of bark?
Is it an energy thing?
It actually comes down to the physics of sound. From an evolutionary standpoint, a short, sharp bark dissipates very quickly. But a howl uses lower acoustic frequencies. Those low-frequency sound waves travel significantly further across a freezing, windy expanse of tundra. It is an incredibly efficient acoustic survival tool.
It's essentially a long-range communication device. It's a dog's version of sending a group text to the pack when they are spread out over miles of ice.
That's a perfect way to put it. They use it to locate each other, signal a change in the environment, or just reinforce pack cohesion. In a modern setting, those instincts are triggered by things that mimic those frequencies, like emergency sirens, other dogs howling, or even certain tones in human music.
But the VitalPet sources make a point to distinguish between a reflex howl and a distress howl. They howl out of sheer boredom, don't they?
They absolutely do, and this is where owners must become fluent in translating their dog's vocalizations. A siren triggering a howl is just a reflex. But if your dog is pacing the house and howling persistently, especially when left alone, it is a very clear, desperate transmission of unmet needs. Usually, it means their massive requirement for physical exertion or mental stimulation has not been fulfilled.
And all of this behavior, the howling, the endless running, the pack loyalty is housed inside a physical body that is just as specialized as the brain. We've explored the behavioral mismatch of bringing this endurance athlete into a modern living room, but we have to address the physical hardware, specifically that famous coat.
The husky coat is a marvel of biological engineering. It's governed by thermodynamics. You have a dense double coat.
Double coat.
Yeah. The undercoat is incredibly soft and thick, sitting tight against the skin to trap a layer of dead air, which acts as thermal insulation against sub-zero temperatures. Then there's a longer, harsher outer coat, made of guard hairs that physically repel snow, ice, and water.
And managing this coat as an owner sounds like a part-time job. I mean, they don't just leave a little fuzz on your sofa. The Academy notes describe a process called blowing coat.
Blowing coat is a dramatic, concentrated biological event. It isn't just random shedding. It is triggered by seasonal changes in daylight and temperature.
So like when spring rolls around.
Yes. When spring arrives, the dog's body recognizes the shift, and that thick undercoat essentially ejects itself in massive, visible clumps. During this period, an owner must commit to significant daily brushing just to manage the sheer volume of loose hair and allow the skin to breathe properly.
It looks like a snowstorm hit your living room because the undercoat is literally pushing itself out to allow air circulation. But beyond the coat, we have to mention the eyes. You see huskies with piercing blue eyes, deep brown eyes, and very often one of each.
That condition is called heterochromia. It is visually striking, but biologically it is simply a genetic variation in how melanin, the pigment responsible for color, is distributed in the iris. One eye receives a concentration of melanin, making it brown, while the other receives very little, leaving it blue. The VitalPet sources confirm it is a completely harmless genetic decoupling that has absolutely no impact on their actual vision. Structurally, assuming they receive proper care, they are a very robust, lean, and reasonably long-lived breed for their medium size.
So what does this all mean for someone living in, say, Phoenix or Miami? The sources get pretty emphatic about this. Bringing a husky into a brutally hot climate isn't just about the dog panting a little more, right? It's a genuine question of biological mismatch.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, biologically speaking, it creates immense physiological friction. The double coat we just described is optimized for sub-zero thermodynamics.
So,
In a hot, humid climate, the dog's ability to thermoregulate is severely compromised. They're at a significantly higher risk for heat stroke than most other breeds.
and going back to the engine analogy, we just established they require hours of sustained, intense physical exercise every single day to keep their sanity. How do you safely drain that energy when it is 95 degrees outside?
That is the ultimate paradox for warm weather owners. You have an animal that desperately needs to run, trapped in an environment where running is biologically dangerous.
Man, that's tough.
It is. If you live in that climate, you have to drastically alter your own schedule. You are committing to exercising the dog only during the coolest hours before dawn or late at night. You must provide constant access to air conditioning, deep shade, and hydration. If the climate physically prevents you from meeting the dog's massive exercise requirements safely, the dog suffers physically, and the owner will inevitably suffer through the destructive, anxious behaviors that follow.
It's like buying that heavy-duty commercial diesel tractor we talked about, but trying to operate it inside a tiny, humid greenhouse. You are going to ruin the engine, and you are going to destroy the greenhouse.
A perfect visualization. The friction with this breed rarely stems from an owner being bad at having dogs. It stems from a profound underestimation of scale. Owners underestimate the scale of the endurance exercise required, the architectural scale of the containment needed, and the psychological scale of negotiating with a brain built for independence.
To pull all of this together for you listening, we've learned that the Siberian Husky is a uniquely majestic, robust, and highly sociable athlete, but succeeding as an owner requires a fundamental lifestyle compromise. You have to actively match their physiological and mental needs. You cannot expect this ancient machinery to simply adapt to your modern convenience.
Right. People who choose a husky purely for the striking aesthetic, without understanding the intricate biological engine underneath, are setting themselves up for frustration. However, an owner who genuinely comprehends the mechanics, who understands the physics of the howl, the geometry of their escapes, and the intelligence behind their disobedience, that owner is equipped to collaborate with those traits.
It's all about reframing your perspective. Whether you are a prospective owner determined to bring a husky into your life, or you're just trying to understand the chaotic, howling dog living in the yard next door, you have to view this animal as a piece of highly tuned survival technology adapting to a foreign world.
Exactly.
Once you grasp the mechanics behind the madness, the frustration melts away, leaving a profound appreciation for their sheer capability.
You are inviting a literal piece of the Siberian wilderness into your living room. You must respect the biology that kept them alive out there.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away today. Think back to that fantasy at the start, seeing that beautiful wolf-like dog at the park, projecting our modern expectations onto it, and hastily labeling it stubborn when it refuses to act like a compliant golden retriever.
Right, that classic mistake.
It leaves you with a really fascinating philosophical question to mull over. If the husky's disobedience is actually a profound, life-saving intelligence that we merely misunderstand because of our environment, what other traits in the animals around us, or even the people around us, do we wrongly label as difficult simply because they are operating outside of their natural context?
A phenomenal question about context, empathy, and how we judge intelligence.
Something to think about the next time you hear that long, low-frequency howl echoing down your street. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.